Broken heart, I was standing in front of my mirror, dressed in a white gown that sparkled under the soft light. My heart was pounding with joy. In a few hours, I was supposed to walk down the aisle and finally become a bride. But before I could even take in the beauty of that moment, the door to my room creaked open, and it wasn't my mother or a bridesmaid. It was my father. His eyes weren't filled with pride or love. They were dark, heavy, and dangerous. Before I could say a word, he stepped closer and locked the door behind him. The smile on my face froze, and my joy turned into fear. That was the day I realized I wasn't his daughter in his eyes. I was just his victim. The screams I let out were swallowed by the music playing downstairs as my guests laughed and celebrated, unaware of the horror happening in the room above them. And in that single moment, my entire world was shattered forever. But before I tell you the rest, let me take a step back. My name is Elizabeth. I'm 72 years old now, and I live quietly in Alabama, USA. I decided to share my story because I know there's someone out there watching this right now who needs to hear it. Before I continue, please make sure you like this video, subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you don't miss more upcoming stories like this one. And tell me in the comments, what part of the country are you watching this from? Alright, let me start from the beginning. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other. My father, Robert, was a strict man who never smiled. My mother, Mary, on the other hand, was soft and gentle. She always said I was her little light. I was their only child, and for most of my childhood, I thought I was loved. But as I got older, I started to notice strange things. My father controlled everything. He told me what to wear, where to go, and even what friends I could have. At first, I thought it was just because he was protective, but soon his control felt more like a cage. When I was 16, I met James. He was kind, with warm brown eyes and a smile that made me forget all my worries. He worked at the bakery down the street, and every morning, I found excuses to pass by just to see him. Our love grew quietly, hidden from my father, because I knew he would never approve. But secrets don't stay secrets forever. One evening, my father caught James walking me home. I'll never forget the rage in his eyes. He didn't speak to James, he looked straight at me and said, "You will never see him again." His voice was low but filled with fire. That night, he locked me in my room. I cried until I fell asleep. Still, James didn't give up. He wrote me letters, slipping them under the fence in our backyard. Each one was filled with hope and promises. One day, he wrote, "I will marry you no matter what." Those letters kept me alive through the darkness. Years passed and James worked hard. He saved enough money, and when I turned 20, he asked me to marry him. My mother was secretly happy for me, but she was too afraid to stand up to my father. So we planned the wedding quietly, hoping my father would accept it once it was too late for him to stop. I thought love would conquer everything. I thought my wedding day would be the happiest day of my life. But on the morning of my wedding, everything changed. My father had found out. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. Instead, he smiled in a way that sent chills through my body. He walked into my room, looked at me in my gown, and said words I will never forget. "If you won't obey me as a daughter, you'll learn to obey me another way." I froze. My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. My father wasn't just a controlling man anymore. He was a monster. And what happened next is the darkest part of my life. That moment in my wedding dress, standing face to face with the man who should have protected me but chose to destroy me. That was the day everything I believed about family, about love, about safety collapsed. I screamed for my mother. I screamed for anyone. But nobody came. All they heard downstairs was laughter and music as they waited for the bride to walk out. They had no idea I was upstairs, locked in a room, with a father who had turned into my worst nightmare. The door was locked. My father's shadow grew taller against the wall as he stepped closer. I pressed my back against the mirror, my gown rustling like dry leaves in the wind. My hands shook, my lips trembled, and every bone in my body screamed for me to run. But there was nowhere to go. "Stop crying," he hissed, his voice sharp as broken glass. "You belong to me. Do you hear me? You'll never belong to anyone else." I begged him. I begged like a child. "Please, Daddy, don't do this. Please. James loves me. I'm supposed to be his bride today. Please let me go. But my words only fed his anger. His eyes burned with something I didn't understand back then, something sick and twisted. He grabbed my arm so hard I thought it would snap. I could hear the music from downstairs, the violin playing softly as guests drank wine and laughed. No one knew that upstairs, the bride was fighting for her life and her dignity. I screamed again, louder this time, but my father slapped me. The sound echoed through the room, and my vision blurred with tears. My cheeks stung, but the pain in my heart was worse. This was my father, the man who was supposed to walk me down the aisle, the man who should have been proud of me. Instead, he was my captor. I tried to run, but my gown tangled around my legs, and I fell. He towered over me, breathing heavily, his fists clenched. I thought it was the end. I thought I would never see James again. Then suddenly, the door shook. Someone was knocking. Elizabeth? It was my mother's voice. Sweetheart, are you ready? Everyone's waiting downstairs. For a moment, silence filled the room. My father froze, his hand still gripping my arm. His eyes darted to the door. My mother knocked again, louder this time. Elizabeth. I saw my chance. I opened my mouth to scream for her, but before a sound could leave my lips, my father pressed his hand tightly over my mouth. My scream was swallowed in his palm. His other hand reached for the lock. When he opened the door, he stood in front of me so my mother couldn't see. She's nervous, he said, his voice calm, almost sweet. Give her a few minutes. She'll be ready. My mother hesitated. Robert, is everything all right? His tone changed instantly. Go downstairs, Mary. I said she'll be ready. Her footsteps faded away, and with them my last hope. When the door clicked shut again, my father turned to me, his mask of sweetness gone, his face twisted with rage. If you ever try to scream again, he whispered, I'll make sure no one ever sees you alive. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My body shook as if every bone inside me had turned to glass. Downstairs the music shifted. I could hear the organ begin to play, the sound that meant it was time for the bride to walk down the aisle. For a moment I thought maybe he'd let me go, maybe he wouldn't dare ruin everything in front of so many people. But I was wrong. Instead he leaned close, his voice low and venomous. You're not walking down that aisle. Not until you understand who you belong to. And with that, he dragged me away from the mirror, ripping the veil from my head. My gown tore as I stumbled against the bed. I thought my heart couldn't break any more than it already had. But then through the window I caught a glimpse of James. He was outside, standing near the church steps, his face glowing with hope as he waited for me. He was looking up, expecting me to appear at any moment in my white dress. And there I was, trapped inside, my father's hand pressing me down, my cries silenced, as the man I loved waited for a bride who might never come. The organ music grew louder, filling the air like a cruel reminder. The guests began to clap. My mother was probably searching for me in confusion. And James was waiting. And I knew in that terrible moment, if I didn't do something, if I didn't fight back now, I would lose everything. So I made a choice. I reached for the heavy silver candlestick on the bedside table, my hand trembling, my breath sharp. My father was too focused on controlling me to notice. My fingers closed around the cold metal, and I raised it high above my head. My father's eyes widened when he realized what I was about to do. The candlestick shook in my hand. My father's eyes locked on it, and for the first time, I saw something in him I had never seen before: fear. Elizabeth, he whispered, his voice low and sharp, put it down. You don't want to do this. But I did. Every ounce of pain, every scream trapped in my throat, every dream he had tried to crush. It all boiled inside me. My body trembled, my heart pounded in my ears, and in that moment, I wasn't his little girl anymore. I was a desperate bride fighting for her freedom. With every bit of strength I had, I swung the candlestick. It didn't land on his head like I hoped. He grabbed my arm just in time, twisting it so hard I dropped the weapon. The candlestick crashed to the floor, rolling under the bed. My cry of pain filled the room and his grip grew tighter. You dare raise your hand against me? He snarled, his spit flying as his face twisted with rage. I tried to push him off, but his strength was greater. He shoved me onto the bed, pinning me down. My gown ripped further, and I felt as though my very soul was tearing apart. The weight of him pressing down was heavier than any nightmare I'd ever had. "Please, Daddy," I sobbed, choking on my tears. "Don't do this. I'm your daughter." For a split second, his eyes flickered. A crack of hesitation. But then his lips curled into a cruel smile. "Exactly. And that means you belong to me. You'll never belong to James. Never." I kicked wildly, my shoes slipping off as I thrashed beneath him. My cries echoed against the walls, but no one came. The music downstairs grew louder, drowning out my screams, the organ playing louder, guests cheering, James waiting for a bride who wasn't coming. And then another knock at the door. This time it wasn't gentle. It was firm. "Elizabeth? What's going on in there?" It was James's voice. My heart leapt in my chest. He had come looking for me. My father froze, his body stiff. His eyes darted to the door. "Don't make a sound," he hissed in my ear, his hand pressing down on my mouth again. "Elizabeth." James called again, his voice louder, worried. "Open the door. Why is it locked?" I wanted to scream for him, to beg him to break it down. But my father's hand smothered every sound. The knob rattled. James was trying to open it. My father leapt from the bed, dragging me with him, his hand still covering my mouth. He shoved me against the wall, his body blocking me from sight, as though he could hide the truth. "Go away, boy," my father shouted. "She's not ready yet." But James didn't leave. I could hear the determination in his voice when he replied, "I know something's wrong. If you don't open this door, I will break it down." Panic flickered in my father's face. He tightened his grip on me, his eyes wild. For the first time I saw fear battling with his control. He wasn't ready to let me go, but he knew James was strong. And if he broke in, everything would be exposed. My father turned back to me, his face inches from mine. "If you say one word," he whispered, "I swear I'll kill him before your eyes." The door shook under James's fists as he pounded harder and harder. My father's grip tightened on my throat now, his eyes blazing with madness. And then, I heard the sound of wood cracking. James was breaking the door. My father's face twisted into rage. He shoved me back onto the bed, grabbed the fallen candlestick from the floor, and raised it high. His eyes weren't on me anymore. They were on the door. "If he comes in," my father growled, "I'll smash his skull before he touches you." The doorframe splintered, and James's voice rang out one last time. "Elizabeth, I'm coming in." And with that, the door burst open. "Got it. Let's raise the stakes." Here's Chapter 4. Picking up from the exact moment the door burst open. Chapter 4. The door crashed against the wall with a thunderous bang. And there he was, James, his chest heaving, his fists clenched, his face pale with shock at what he saw. My gown was torn. My hair was messy, my cheek still red from my father's slap. My father stood between us, gripping the silver candlestick like a weapon, his eyes dark and blazing with madness. For a moment, the room froze. None of us moved. None of us spoke. The music from downstairs sounded distant now, almost mocking, as though another world was celebrating while ours was about to collapse. "Step back," my father growled, raising the candlestick higher. "She's not yours. She's mine." James's eyes widened in horror. He looked at me, then back at my father. "You're her father," he said, his voice breaking. "How could you even?" "Don't you dare lecture me," my father snapped, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the candlestick tighter. "She will never be your wife. Not while I live." James took a step forward, his voice shaking but strong. "Then maybe you won't live much longer." My breath caught in my throat. I had never seen James like this, angry, fierce, ready to fight. His hands curled into fists, his eyes blazing. He wasn't just a baker anymore. He was a man fighting for the woman he loved. "Run, Elizabeth," James shouted suddenly. But I couldn't move. My legs felt like stone. I was too weak, too afraid. All I could do was cry, my voice shaking. "Please don't. He'll kill you." My father let out a laugh, cold and cruel. "Kill him? I'll enjoy it." Then it happened. My father swung the candlestick at James with terrifying force. James ducked just in time. The candlestick slammed into the doorframe with a deafening crack, splintering wood. Before my father could swing again, James lunged at him. The two men collided, crashing onto the floor. The candlestick rolled out of my father's hand and clattered across the room. I screamed as they fought. My father's fists pounded against James's back, but James refused to let go. He grabbed my father by the collar, shoving him against the bed frame. The sound of wood cracking filled the air. "Stay down," James roared. But my father was a strong man, fueled by rage and madness. With a violent shove, he threw James off balance. James stumbled, his head hitting the edge of the dresser. Blood trickled down his forehead and he fell to his knees. "No!" I cried, rushing toward him. Before I could reach him, my father grabbed me by the wrist, yanking me back. His grip was iron, his face twisted with fury. "If you won't obey me," he snarled, "then neither of you will leave this room alive." He reached for the candlestick again. My heart stopped. James was still on the floor, struggling to get up, his eyes dazed from the blow. My father lifted the candlestick above his head, aiming straight for James's skull. Time slowed. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. My breath caught in my throat. If that candlestick came down, James would be gone forever. And in that split second, something inside me snapped. I tore my hand free, grabbed the lamp from the nightstand, and smashed it against my father's back with all the strength I had left. Glass shattered everywhere. My father roared in pain, stumbling forward, the candlestick slipping from his hand. James seized the chance. With a surge of strength, he rose to his feet and slammed into my father, tackling him to the ground. The two of them wrestled, fists flying, grunts and curses filling the room. And then I heard it. A scream. Not mine. Not James's. It was my mother. She stood in the doorway, her eyes wide in horror, her hand over her mouth. She had finally seen everything. The torn gown, the blood, the truth about the monster she had married. "Robert," she screamed. "What have you done?" Her voice shook the room. My father froze for just a moment, his eyes locking on her. And in that frozen moment, James reached for the candlestick, raised it high, and brought it down. The sickening sound of metal striking flesh filled the air. My father collapsed, his body falling limp to the floor. Silence. Only the sound of my sobs and my mother's trembling breaths filled the room. James stood over my father, his chest heaving, the candlestick dripping with blood. And then my father moved. Slowly, weakly. But he wasn't dead. His eyes filled with fury turned to me. "This isn't over," he rasped, his voice like a demon crawling from the grave. My father's words sent ice through my veins. "This isn't over," he rasped, blood trickling from his temple as he dragged himself up from the floor like a beast that refused to die. James stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body. The candlestick was still clutched in his hand, blood smeared across the silver. His chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. He didn't want to kill my father. He just wanted to save me. "Stay down, Robert," James warned, his voice trembling with both anger and fear. "Don't make me do this again." But my father only laughed, a hollow, chilling laugh that rattled inside my bones. He staggered to his feet, swaying but unbroken. "You think you can steal her from me? You think you can take what's mine?" His voice cracked with madness. "Robert, please." My mother's voice shook as tears streamed down her face. She clutched the door frame as though it were the only thing keeping her upright. "Stop this. She's our daughter, not yours," he snapped, cutting her off. "She's mine. She always has been. And she always will be." His words made me shiver. It wasn't love that burned in his eyes. It was obsession, twisted and rotten. I clung to James's arm, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't let him near me. Please." James's jaw tightened. "He won't touch you again." My father lunged. James swung the candlestick, but my father ducked low and rammed into his chest. The two men crashed into the dresser, knocking everything to the floor. Glass shattered, wood splintered, the mirror cracked down the middle like a symbol of my broken life. I screamed as my father's hands clawed at James's throat, squeezing, his face twisted with pure hatred. James gasped, his face reddening, his fingers clawing at my father's wrists. "Stop it!" I cried, rushing forward. I pulled at my father's arms, but he was too strong, too consumed by rage. His grip tightened, James's body trembling beneath him. "Say goodbye to your precious groom," my father hissed through clenched teeth. I panicked. My eyes darted around the room, desperate for something, anything, I could use to stop him. That's when I saw it. A pair of sewing scissors on the floor, knocked down in the chaos. My hands shook as I grabbed them. My breath came in sharp gasps. Could I do it? Could I stab my own father? James's gasps grew weaker. His eyes were rolling back. I didn't have a choice. With a cry that ripped through my chest, I plunged the scissors into my father's shoulder. He roared, releasing James and staggering back. His hand shot to his wound, blood pouring through his fingers. James collapsed, coughing and gasping for air, his throat red with bruises. I fell beside him, my hands shaking as I tried to help him breathe. My father stumbled, his face pale, his shirt soaked in blood. But his eyes, those terrible eyes, were still fixed on me. "You'll regret this," he spat, his voice hoarse but deadly. "If I can't have you, no one will." And then he ran. To my shock, he didn't collapse. He bolted for the door, blood trailing behind him. My mother shrieked as he shoved past her, his body crashing into the hallway wall before disappearing into the stairwell. For a moment, silence filled the room. All I could hear was James's ragged breathing and my own heart pounding in my ears. Then faintly from downstairs came the sound of screams. Guests shouting. Panic spreading. I staggered to the window and looked out. My father was outside, stumbling through the crowd of wedding guests, his shirt soaked in blood, his eyes wild and furious. People screamed and backed away as he grabbed a knife from one of the catering tables. And then, he turned his gaze upward. Our eyes met through the window, and with a bloody grin, he raised the knife high and shouted loud enough for the whole town to hear. "She will never be your bride." The crowd gasped. My mother screamed. James staggered to his feet behind me, and I realized with horror, my father wasn't done. He was ready to destroy the wedding, the guests, and anyone who dared stand in his way. The screams from the guests grew louder as my father staggered through the crowd, the knife glinting in his bloody hand. Women clutched their children, men shouted in panic, and the music from the organ stopped suddenly, leaving only the sound of chaos. From the window, I watched in horror. My father's shirt was soaked red, but his steps were fueled by something more powerful than pain, madness. His eyes darted wildly, his mouth twisted into a snarl as he shouted, "There will be no wedding. She is mine. She will always be mine." Gasps rippled through the guests. Faces turned up toward the window where I stood in my torn gown, and whispers broke out. They could see me, pale and trembling, James behind me with blood streaked across his face. They began to piece together the truth. "Elizabeth." My mother cried from the stairs, her voice breaking. "Stay upstairs. Don't come down." But my heart wouldn't let me stay still. My father was going to hurt someone. He had already tried to destroy me. Now he was ready to destroy everything around me too. James staggered to the window beside me, clutching his bruised throat. "We can't stay here," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "He'll kill someone. I have to stop him." "No," I begged, grabbing his arm. "You're hurt. If you go out there, he'll kill you." His brown eyes locked on mine, fierce and unyielding. "Elizabeth, I'd rather die protecting you than watch him hurt you again." Before I could stop him, James rushed out of the room, stumbling down the stairs. My heart nearly stopped. I turned back to the window. My father was pushing through the crowd now, knocking over chairs and tables, the knife swinging wildly. People screamed, scattering in all directions. Some tried to hold him back, but he slashed at them, sending them scrambling away. "Where is she?" he roared. His voice echoed through the air, terrifying in its fury. "Where's my Elizabeth?" Then I saw James step outside. His face was pale, blood dripping from his temple, but he stood tall, his fists clenched. "Robert!" James shouted, his voice strong despite his injuries. "Leave her alone. If you want to fight someone, fight me." The crowd gasped. My father stopped in his tracks, his eyes locking on James. His bloody smile stretched wider. "You again," he hissed. "You think you're a man? You think you can take her from me? She was never yours to take." James shouted back. She's not your possession. She's your daughter. For a moment my father's face twitched. The crowd held its breath. And then with a roar my father charged. The two men collided in the center of the yard, the knife flashing dangerously. Guests screamed and pulled back, forming a circle of terror around them. My mother collapsed to her knees, sobbing, her hands covering her face. I couldn't watch anymore. My body moved on its own. I tore out of the room, down the stairs, my gown snagging on the wooden steps. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would break through my chest. When I burst outside, the sight made me nearly faint. James and my father were locked in a deadly struggle. James gripped my father's wrist, trying to stop the knife from plunging into his chest. Their faces were twisted with effort, sweat and blood mixing as they fought. "James!" I screamed. His eyes flicked toward me for just a second, but that second was enough. My father's knee slammed into his stomach, and James staggered, gasping. The knife slipped free. My father raised it high, his voice a guttural growl. "If I can't have her, no one will." And he aimed the blade straight for James's heart. Time seemed to stop. The guests screamed. My mother wailed. I ran forward, my arms outstretched, my voice raw with terror. "No!" The knife came down, and I threw myself between them. The world slowed. I felt the wind of the blade as it cut through the air, the glint of steel catching the sunlight for the briefest second before it struck. A burning pain ripped through my side. I gasped, my voice breaking into a scream. The knife had found me. The crowd erupted in horror. My mother shrieked, her cry piercing through every scream around us. James's eyes widened in shock as he caught me before I collapsed to the ground. "Elizabeth." No. His voice broke as he held me close, his trembling hands pressing against the wound where blood was already soaking my gown. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. But then, I forced myself to look up. My father stood frozen, his face pale, his eyes wide. He hadn't expected it. He hadn't expected me to take the blow meant for James. "You," he stammered, his voice low, trembling. "You took it for him?" I winced, my breath shallow. "I'd rather die with him than live with you." Something snapped in his face. His eyes darkened again, rage boiling back to the surface. "Then you'll both die." He raised the knife again. But this time James was ready. With a roar fueled by fury and desperation, James lunged forward, tackling him with all the strength left in his body. The two of them crashed into a table, plates and glasses shattering around them. The knife clattered across the ground, sliding out of reach. The crowd erupted, some screaming, others shouting for help. Two men, neighbors from our town, rushed forward, finally brave enough to intervene. They grabbed my father by the arms, pulling him back as he kicked and thrashed like a wild animal. "Let me go," he roared, his spit flying, his face twisted with madness. "She's mine. She'll always be mine." James staggered back to me, his hands trembling as he pressed harder on my wound. His voice shook as he whispered, "Stay with me, Elizabeth. Don't you dare leave me. Not like this." I tried to smile through the pain, but my body was weak. The world around me tilted, the screams fading into a dull roar. Then over the chaos I heard my father's voice again, louder, darker, filled with venom. "If I can't kill you with my hands, I'll burn you all." My eyes shot open. I watched in horror as my father twisted free from the men holding him and staggered toward the catering tent. His bloody hands grabbed one of the lanterns burning there for decoration. "No." I tried to cry out, my voice faint. But it was too late. With a guttural scream, my father hurled the lantern into the air. It shattered against the tables stacked with wine and cloth. In an instant flames erupted, devouring the decorations, racing across the yard with terrifying speed. The guests panicked, scattering in every direction. Children screamed, women cried, men shouted. The fire spread fast, leaping from tablecloths to wooden benches, and then to the edges of the church itself. James's face paled as he realized the danger. He scooped me into his arms, holding me tightly against him. "We have to get out now." But my father stood in the middle of the chaos, the firelight flickering across his twisted grin. He looked up at me in James's arms and screamed one last chilling vow. "If you won't be mine in life, you'll be mine in death." and with that he rushed straight into the flames. The fire roared like a beast unleashed. Orange and red flames leapt high into the sky, devouring everything in their path. Smoke curled thick and black, stinging my eyes and burning my throat as James carried me across the yard. "Hold on, Elizabeth," he whispered, his voice trembling but fierce. His arms were strong, but I could feel his body shaking. Blood still trickled from his temple. His shirt was torn. Yet he held me as though I were the only thing keeping him alive. Behind us, guests scattered in panic. Mothers screamed for their children. Men tried to douse the flames with buckets of water, but it was useless. The fire was too fast, too wild. The church bells began to clang, not for celebration but in alarm. And then through the smoke I saw him. My father. He was standing in the middle of the flames, his body silhouetted by fire. His shirt was burning, his skin blistering, but his eyes, those terrible eyes, were still locked on me. His mouth moved, his voice raspy yet loud enough to pierce through the chaos. "You'll never escape me, Elizabeth. Even in death. I'll find you." The sight made my blood run cold. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a monster consumed by madness and fire. James quickened his pace, clutching me tighter as we pushed through the terrified crowd. "Don't look at him," he whispered, his voice breaking. "He can't hurt you anymore. Not while I'm here." But my father wasn't done. Through the flames he stumbled forward, his body a living torch. People screamed and fell back as he staggered closer, clutching a burning piece of wood in his hand like a weapon. "Elizabeth," he roared, his voice guttural, echoing through the night. "If you won't be my bride, then I'll burn your groom alive." My heart lurched. James froze, his grip tightening around me. He turned to face my father, his jaw clenched, his eyes blazing with defiance. "You'll never touch her again," James said, his voice low but steady. And then my father charged. The burning wood swung through the air, scattering sparks in every direction. James twisted away just in time, but the fire licked his sleeve, searing the fabric. He cried out, dropping me to the ground to beat the flames off his arm. "No!" I screamed, crawling toward him despite the pain ripping through my side. My father loomed above us now, his body burning, his face unrecognizable, twisted by both fire and fury. He raised the flaming wood high, ready to bring it down on James. But before he could strike, something happened. The roof of the catering tent, weakened by the spreading fire, collapsed with a thunderous crash. Burning wood and fabric fell between us and my father, cutting him off. Flames shot into the air, and smoke filled the yard. Through the fire I saw him one last time. His eyes, wide and wild, locked on mine. He opened his mouth, his voice a strangled roar. "Elizabeth, you are mine." And then the flames swallowed him. His figure disappeared into the inferno, his screams mixing with the crackle of fire until there was nothing left. The crowd stood frozen, horrified, watching as the blaze consumed everything. My mother collapsed onto the grass, sobbing uncontrollably. James pulled me close again, his arms wrapping around me as though he feared I would vanish too. "It's over," he whispered, his voice hoarse, his tears falling onto my hair. "It has to be over." But as I clung to him, trembling, a cold thought crept into my mind. Was it really over? Because even as the flames devoured him, my father's last words echoed in my head like a curse I couldn't escape. "Even in death, I'll find you." The fire raged until the night swallowed the day. By the time it finally died down, nothing was left of the churchyard but charred wood, black smoke, and the smell of ruin. The wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life had become a nightmare burned into ashes. I lay in James's arms on the grass, my white gown now soaked in blood and dirt. My side throbbed where the knife had cut me, but the greater pain was inside my chest, a hollow ache that no doctor could heal. Guests stood scattered around us, their faces pale, their eyes wide with shock. Whispers floated through the smoky air. "Did you see what he did? Her own father. God have mercy." I heard them, every word slicing into me. My secret was no longer a secret. The whole town had seen what my father truly was. My mother knelt beside me, her hands trembling as she reached for my face. "Elizabeth," she whispered, her voice broken. "I should have stopped him. I should have protected you." Her tears fell hot on my skin. "I'm so sorry, my little light." I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it wasn't her fault, but the truth weighed heavy in my heart. She had known. She had seen glimpses of his darkness, yet she had stayed silent, too afraid to stand against him. And now silence had cost us everything. James pressed his hand gently against my wound, his own face pale with exhaustion. "We need to get you to a doctor," he said firmly. Now, 2 men from the town stepped forward. They made a stretcher from broken wood and cloth, and together, they lifted me. The crowd parted as we passed, their eyes filled with pity, horror, and something else, judgment. As we moved down the road toward the town doctor's house, I caught sight of the smoldering remains of the tent. The flames had finally died, but in the blackened rubble, I thought I saw something, a shadow, a shape. For just a second, it looked like my father's figure standing in the smoke, his eyes burning into mine. I blinked and it was gone, but the chill stayed in my bones. At the doctor's house, they laid me on a table. He worked quickly, cleaning the wound, stitching the flesh, his face grave. "She's lucky," he muttered. "A few inches deeper, and that knife would have ended her." Lucky. Was that what I was? I didn't feel lucky. I felt broken, torn between grief, anger, and a fear that no fire could burn away. James stayed by my side, holding my hand through every stitch, whispering, "I'm here. I'm not leaving." His voice was the only anchor keeping me from drifting into the dark. When the doctor finished, I was weak but alive. They carried me to a spare room where I could rest. My mother sat by the bed, her hands clutching mine so tightly her knuckles turned white. James paced the floor, his body restless, his eyes sharp with worry. But as the hours passed, sleep refused to come. My mind replayed everything: the slap, the candlestick, the knife, the fire. My father's voice echoed in the silence, louder than my heartbeat. "Even in death, I'll find you." Suddenly I jolted upright, gasping. James rushed to me, his hand on my shoulder. "Elizabeth, what is it?" My eyes darted to the window. For a moment I swore I saw a shadow standing just outside, watching. My chest tightened, my throat closing. "He's gone," James said firmly, his voice steady. "He's gone. The fire took him. He can't hurt you anymore." But deep inside I wasn't sure. Because when I closed my eyes I could still feel him. His hands, his eyes, his curse. And then just before dawn I heard it. A knock at the door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. The whole house froze. James turned sharply toward the sound, his jaw tightening. My mother gasped, her face pale. The doctor stepped into the hall, frowning. Who could that be at this hour? The knocks came again. Louder. My blood turned to ice. My hand shook as I whispered, "It's him. It's my father." The knock echoed through the small house like a drum of doom. 3 times. Slow. Heavy. Each thud sent a shiver down my spine. My breath came short and sharp. My stitched side ached as I clutched the sheets. My heart pounding so hard I thought it would tear out of my chest. "No," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It can't be. He's dead. I saw him burn." James moved quickly, stepping between me and the door. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched. "Stay here," he told me, his voice steady even though I saw fear flicker in his eyes. The doctor grabbed a lantern and went to the door, muttering, "It's probably just a traveler, or the sheriff coming to ask questions." But even his voice shook. The knocks came again. Louder this time. Boom. 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 James reached the door before the doctor could open it. He pressed his ear against the wood, listening. Then with one sharp movement he yanked it open. The cold night air rushed in. At first, I saw nothing, just the darkness, thick and heavy. Then a figure stepped forward, half hidden in the shadows. It wasn't my father. It was the sheriff. His face looked grave, his hat pulled low. In his hands he carried a charred piece of wood wrapped in cloth. Relief washed over me, but only for a moment. Because when the sheriff stepped inside, he unwrapped the cloth and laid it on the table. My blood turned cold. It was my father's wedding ring, blackened by fire. "We found this in the ashes," the sheriff said quietly. "Along with what was left of him. The fire did its work. There's no doubt. He's gone." My mother covered her mouth, choking on a sob. James squeezed my hand, as if reminding me I was safe. But my eyes stayed fixed on that ring. The sheriff continued, his voice low. But before he died, folks say they heard him screaming your name, Elizabeth. Some even claim they saw him walking through the flames calling out. Superstitious talk maybe, but I'd be careful. He left the ring on the table, tipped his hat, and walked back into the night. The door closed, but the weight of his words stayed heavy in the room. I stared at the ring, my stomach twisting. That band of gold, once a symbol of love between my parents, was now a cursed reminder of everything he had taken from me. James knelt beside me. Listen to me, he whispered, his voice fierce. Your father is gone. He can't hurt you anymore. We'll leave this town, start fresh somewhere else. No more secrets. No more chains. Just us. Tears blurred my vision, but for the first time, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe freedom was possible. Maybe love could heal what fear had broken. My mother squeezed my other hand. Her eyes, red with grief, searched mine. Forgive me, Elizabeth. I should have protected you. I should have spoken when I saw the darkness in him. Silence only fed his power. Don't ever be silent again. Her words cut deep, but they carried a truth I would carry forever. That night, as dawn painted the sky in pale gold, I lay awake, staring at the ring on the table. My father's voice still whispered in the back of my mind, his final curse haunting me. Even in death, I'll find you. But I realized something. He could only haunt me if I let him. His shadow could only live in my silence. And so, with trembling hands, I asked James to take the ring outside. Together we buried it deep in the earth beneath an old oak tree. Stay buried, I whispered, pressing the soil down with my palms. Stay gone. The wind rustled through the leaves as if answering. For the first time in years I felt the weight on my chest lighten. My father was dead. His curse was broken. But his memory would forever be a scar on my soul. Still I chose to live. To love. To never stay silent again. And that, my dear listeners, is the lesson I want you to carry. Silence protects the monster, not the victim. Speak. Fight. Choose freedom even if it costs everything. Because no one deserves to be a prisoner of fear, especially not by the hands of someone meant to protect you. For weeks after the fire, life in our town carried on. But for me, every day felt like a battle. My body healed from the wound, the stitches holding my skin together, but my mind remained torn open. I couldn't walk through the marketplace without hearing whispers behind my back. That's the girl her father tried to kill. She should have spoken sooner. No wonder he snapped. Imagine the shame. Shame. That word clung to me like a second skin. As if I had been the guilty one. As if my suffering was my own fault. James tried to shield me from it. He stayed close, his hand always finding mine, his voice always whispering courage into my ears. They don't know the truth. Don't let them steal your voice. But it wasn't just the townsfolk. It was me. My own mind was my worst enemy. At night, I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, certain I saw my father standing in the corner of my room, his eyes glowing in the dark. One night, I bolted upright, gasping, my throat raw from screaming. James grabbed me, pulling me into his arms. Elizabeth, it's just a dream, he whispered. He's gone. But when I looked over his shoulder, I swore I saw it again. The shadow of a man standing by the window, watching. I couldn't live like this. Not in the same town where the whispers burned and the memories hunted me. So one morning, I packed what little I owned and told James, we have to leave. If we stay here, I'll never be free. His ghost will follow me in every corner. James didn't hesitate. Then we'll go, he said. Anywhere you want. As long as we're together. My mother, weak but determined, joined us. She had lost her husband to fire and shame, but she said she would not lose her daughter to silence again. We'll go, she whispered. We'll start again. We sold the land, packed a wagon, and left before sunrise. I didn't look back because I was afraid if I did, I'd see him, standing in the ashes waiting. The road stretched long and hard. Days turned into weeks. But with each mile between me and the place where my father had died, my chest grew lighter. Until one night, we stopped at an inn along the roadside. The air was cold, and the wind howled through the cracks in the walls. I was just drifting into sleep when I heard it. 3 slow, heavy knocks. Boom! 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 I froze. My heart pounded. James stirred beside me. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. The knocks came again, louder this time. The sound rattled the wooden door of the inn room. I swallowed hard, my voice shaking. "It's him. It's my father." James shot up, grabbed the lantern, and moved toward the door. The knocks came one last time, so hard that dust fell from the ceiling. When James opened the door, the hallway was empty. But on the floor, right at the threshold, lay a small piece of blackened gold. My father's wedding ring. I stared at the ring lying on the floorboards, the lantern light glinting off its charred surface. My throat tightened. "It can't be," I whispered, backing away. "We buried it." "James, you buried it with me. We buried it under the oak tree." James bent down slowly, his hand hovering above the ring but not touching it. His face was pale, his jaw tight. "I did," he said firmly. "I swear to you, Elizabeth. I put it deep into the ground myself." "Then how is it here?" My voice cracked. "How?" My mother stirred awake in the bed, her tired eyes widening when she saw what James was holding. She pressed her hands to her mouth. "No. No, it can't be." James wrapped the ring in a scrap of cloth and tied it tight, as if even touching it was dangerous. "Listen to me," he said. "This is someone's trick. Someone dug it up. Someone is trying to torment you." "Ooh," I cried, my voice trembling. "Who would do such a thing?" "He's dead, James. I saw the fire consume him. I saw the ashes. And yet, he won't leave me alone." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the inn felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like his voice calling my name. By morning, I was certain. This wasn't just the past haunting me. Someone, or something, was following us. The road stretched on. Town after town blurred together, but the fear stayed sharp. Each time we stopped for rest, I felt eyes on me. Sometimes I thought I saw a shadow moving at the edge of the woods. Sometimes, I thought I smelled smoke, even when no fire burned. One night, as we camped by the river, James threw the wrapped ring into the rushing water. "There," he said. "Gone forever. It can't follow us now." I wanted to believe him. But the next morning, when I opened my travel bag to fetch my comb, the cloth was inside. Wet, dripping, the blackened ring resting in the folds. I screamed. James grabbed it, cursed under his breath, and tossed it into the fire. The flames hissed, the gold turning red, then white. We watched it melt into nothing but a twisted lump of metal. "It's over," James said firmly, though his hand trembled. "He can't follow us anymore. He's gone." For a moment, relief filled my chest. Maybe this nightmare had ended. Maybe it was just a final test of my courage. But that night, as I finally drifted into uneasy sleep, I dreamed of my father. His face appeared in the smoke of the fire, his voice low and terrible. "You can melt the gold, but you cannot melt me." I woke with a scream, my body shaking. And this time I knew it wasn't just a dream, because on the dirt floor beside my bedroll, drawn in ashes, were the words. I stared at the words on the ground, my breath caught in my throat. My fingers trembled as I touched the ashes, half expecting them to vanish like smoke. But they were real. They smeared against my fingertips. My mother gasped when she saw it, clutching her chest. "No, no, he's gone, Elizabeth. He has to be gone." James knelt beside me, his face pale, his jaw set tight. He didn't look at me when he said, "This isn't him. Someone is doing this to frighten you. It has to be." But even he couldn't explain how the ashes had appeared when the fire had already died hours before. That night, none of us slept. Every sound outside the camp made us flinch. Every crack of branches in the woods sent our hearts racing. I held my mother's hand so tightly it left marks on her skin. By morning, we packed faster than ever before. The river road stretched long, and we didn't dare stop until the sun was high overhead. But even in the daylight, I felt his presence. My father's voice seemed to ride on the wind. "Elizabeth." I spun around, but no one was there. James noticed the way I froze, the way my eyes darted. "Don't listen," he urged. "It's only your mind. Trauma can do this." But I wasn't sure anymore. Was it only my mind? Or was the fire not enough to end him? Days passed. We reached a larger town, bustling with noise and trade. A place where strangers didn't care who we were. James thought it would be safer to rest here to gather ourselves. The first night in the tavern, I sat by the window staring at the street below. Merchants shouted, children laughed, the smell of bread filled the air. For once life felt almost normal. Until I looked down. There, in the middle of the busy street, stood a man. His clothes were torn, his skin scarred with burns, but his eyes, those eyes I knew too well. My father. He was staring straight at me. I stumbled back from the window, knocking over the candle. My mother screamed, James rushed to me. But by the time he looked outside, the street was empty. There was no one there, James insisted. But I knew what I saw. My father's face, alive, burned but alive. The next morning proved it wasn't madness. When we went to the stables to ready our horse, our wagon had been slashed. The wheels were broken, the canvas cut through as if by knives. And on the driver's bench, scratched deep into the wood, were the words,